difference between a cheap rubber basketball and a quality rubber basketball, and why you should choose quality over price. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Shout out to the guy though. This is my guy flow, need money pronto. Make me a honcho. Challenge me, I go Super Saiyan God mode. Benevolent, I'm in my element. My lady look like Maleficent. I get no fuss like a...
While this may be an obvious topic, I still think it's an important one. And the reason it came up is because my city has this cool program where they have these bins full of basketballs just sitting at local parks where kids can come and get a kid-sized basketball and use them on the local courts. But of course, the balls are provided by the city, and so they're just cheap, everyday rubber basketballs. And it made me think about if you were choosing between buying a cheap basketball or paying quality price for a quality ball, or you were buying one as a gift for a kid who is trying to get into basketball, which should you buy? Should you save the money and go for the cheap, or should you pay the money and go for the quality? So first of all, let's talk about the differences between the two. The most important difference between the two is the material that the balls are made out of. Because everything in terms of quality falls under the guise of what materials are the ball made out of. Now these are both rubber basketballs, both made out of rubber, but it's easy to tell that this rubber is much less quality, much cheaper than this rubber. The better rubber the ball is made out of, the better features the ball can have. So this ball has very thin, cheap rubber. This ball has very thick, heavy, hefty, quality rubber to it. Because of that, this ball is able to have much better pebbling on the ball compared to the barely noticeable pebbling that's on this ball. Because there's better pebbling, that also allows this ball to have better grip channels. Whereas there's pretty much no distinguishable grip channels on this ball. I mean, they're there and you can see them and you can kind of feel them, but they're more cosmetic than functional by far. You put material, pebbling, and grip channels together, that gives you the overall quality of the ball, which also provides you with the overall durability of the ball. And this ball has little to no durability. In fact, when I showed up to the court today, that bin full of balls is completely flat. All the balls in there are flat balls. So then I got out my pump and I pumped up this ball to use in this video, and by the time I went to go use it, it's flat again. Which means the quality and durability of this ball is terrible. You can't even use this ball because it's done. It won't bounce. There's no point of using a basketball that won't bounce. So cheap basketballs, their durability is almost nil, and if you can't even use a ball, then what's the point of paying $5 for a ball that's going to be useless within weeks to less than months? Also, no matter how cheap the cheap ball is, it's never going to equate to the value that you get when you pay top dollar for a quality rubber basketball. Now that we've gone over the differences between the two balls, let's talk about why exactly you should buy quality over cheapness. As I've said before, one of the great things about basketball is that you don't need much to play basketball. Unlike other American sports like baseball, football, even hockey, where you have to have all of the equipment and you have to pay top dollar for all of it. It's also crazily expensive. In basketball, I've always said you only have two basketball tools that you necessarily need, which are, one is your shoes. You have to have decently good basketball shoes, and you have to have a decently good basketball. Those are the only two basketball tools that you need. And think about the tools that you yourself use in regular everyday life. And I'm not talking strictly, literally about actual tools like drills and sanders and stuff like that. I'm talking about just any tool. Think about things like mouse, keyboard, laptop, smartphone, just regular everyday tools like that. Now let's say instead of buying a quality smartphone, you bought a cheap smartphone. And that smartphone only works like 80% of the time. Now 80% of the time is still a huge major part of the time, but if your iPhone only works 80% of the time, imagine how frustrating that would be. Imagine if you had a video game controller and the video game controller only worked 80% of the time. That is completely unacceptable. That is very similar to having a cheap basketball, because for those of you who don't know, okay, just because a ball has decent grip on it and because it actually bounces, those two things don't mean that it's a good basketball. This is a tool. It's meant to be used as a tool, and just because it has grip and bounces doesn't mean that that tool works properly. And look, I understand the logic of I'm gonna buy this ball as a gift for a kid who may or may not be into basketball, but I don't know for sure if they're going to be into basketball. So because of that, I'm just gonna buy a cheap one now, and then if it happens to turn out that they do get into basketball, I'll buy a better one, a more expensive one later. Here's why you should invest in the quality one up front. In the example that you're buying this for a little kid who you don't know if they're going to be into basketball yet or not, if you buy a cheap ball that doesn't work, that if it's like this ball where it's already flat after only being out here for a few months, if this ball doesn't work, if it's not usable, if they can't use it, then they're obviously not going to use it. So there's no way for you to tell whether or not they're actually going to get into basketball, because they now don't have a basketball to use. You get what you pay for when you buy a cheap basketball. And even if the ball is usable, which it obviously should be, it's not going to be for long. If that kid does get into basketball and starts using it on a regular basis, these balls are gonna break down and become unusable very quickly. As opposed to buying a good quality basketball, where this is going to work from straight out of the box and last for years, especially for young little kids. Good quality basketballs are going to last them longer than they would if they were teenagers and using the ball all day, every day, putting this ball through its paces. When you just have a little kid, this ball is going to last even longer for them. And because it's such good quality, they're going to want to use this ball more often. They're going to want to explore this ball and see what the ball can do and use it more often than this cheap, crappy ball that doesn't really work. Just because kids may not pay attention, because it may not be as important to them as far as quality in a basketball goes, it's still going to resonate with them that this is way better than this. If a little kid, 9, 10-year-old kid shows up to the court and they have this ball with them and other kids are using this ball, what do you think the kids out here are going to prefer to use? And if they prefer to use this ball and that kid owns this ball, he's going to take pride in owning and having this ball, which means he's going to want to bring the ball out to the court more often, use it more often, because he has pride in this ball. And the more he uses this ball, the more he explores his potential for liking, enjoying, and being good at basketball. Also, taking price into consideration, think about it like this. If that kid does end up really getting into basketball, really taking it seriously, really wanting to explore where they can go with the basketball, and so they decide that they are going to want to start playing in school, in AAU, trying to play high school ball, college basketball. Well, eventually, that kid's going to be playing way more indoors than outdoors, which means eventually that kid is going to grow to the point where they're going to need indoor basketballs more than they're going to need outdoor basketballs. And indoor basketballs are made out of leather and composite leather, and those materials are way more expensive to make and buy than a rubber basketball. This is as far as I know, the best quality rubber outdoor basketball available on the market in 2021, and it's $20. As compared to those $50, $60, $70 leather indoor basketballs, you are getting a steal if you buy this ball for a kid. By the time they're that age, they'll probably be able to buy those more expensive basketballs themselves, but for now, you've invested in this kid's lifelong passion by getting them this $20 high quality outdoor rubber basketball. So spend the money. This is definitely an instance of you get what you pay for, and you should always go for quality over price. Those are the differences between a quality basketball and a cheap basketball, and why you should always buy quality over price. All things considered, this is a great value, quality investment you can make in someone's basketball career. Whether or not you know for sure they are going to be or not be into basketball, buy them the quality one anyway. Give them the best opportunity possible to explore their basketball potential. For those of you who are wondering, this is the Spalding NBA Street Phantom Edition basketball. I have a number of reviews of this basketball. You guys can check out the playlist on my channel to find those videos. There are more expensive outdoor rubber basketballs on the market, but they are more expensive because they have NBA players' names attached to them. And those balls may be just as good as this ball, but I'm pretty sure, this is part of what I do, I'm pretty sure those balls are not better than this ball. They may be just as good, but it's not really possible for those balls to be better than this ball. And unfortunately, I have no affiliation with Spalding, so it's not like I'm paid to promote their balls. I just, in my opinion, in my experience, this is the best quality rubber outdoor basketball on the market. Go for quality over cheapness every time. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help you choose a good basketball for you or someone else, please give me a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. That is huge for me. I cannot express how much I appreciate when you guys subscribe. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when every video that I make comes out. And speaking of videos being released, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified when all of the new videos come out as well. And until then, I will see you guys next week.
Don't look at the deficit. Don't get ahead of yourself. I pull out the weapon, I call it the sedative. Pull it out.
Side note, this is actually the best ball I could find in this bin of public usable basketballs. And by best, I mean that this one, I think, is the only one that actually bounces, and it's not great. So buy good balls. Don't do this. This is not. If you're trying to be a serious basketball player, or you're trying to get someone else seriously into basketball, this is not right. Don't disrespect yourself or them like this. Go get a quality ball.
Now I'm feeling really rowdy like a Roddy Piper.